Hi, welcome to the next session. We have so far discussed on a lot of topics, very important and basic topics we have discussed in the previous session videos that you have watched. So, in this particular session, we will discuss about web application protocols, cryptography, hashing, digital signatures, and so on. So, let's get started. Web application, because you would be working for the web application on the web application projects as part of the as part of your red team internship that you will be doing. So when you're talking about web application, what is a web application? Web application is it's an application software that runs on a web server. Okay, application software that runs on a web server. So we have already discussed about server in the last session. So there are hardware based servers and there are software based servers as well, and don't judge server with the size with its size. That's not right. So there are a lot of servers. We will discuss about that also here. Web applications are accessed by the user through a web browser with an active network connection. Okay, so there is a web browser connected somewhere in some part of the world, and with an active network or in internet, you access the uh, websites there. Okay, so before we go ahead, I would like to show you about this particular thing called as submarine cable map. Okay, if you're aware of it, it's good. However, if you're not aware of it, this is for your knowledge purpose. So many of us do not know how the entire world is connected with the internet. Okay, many think that it is satellite based, it is net wi-fi, or it is tower based. However, at the end, the entire world is connected with each other using the physical cables that is laid down under the ocean. Okay, so if you see, all these are cables which are in ocean. So this is North Pacific Ocean, South Pacific Ocean, North Atlantic Ocean, South Atlantic Ocean. We have Arabian Sea here, and that's where India is. Okay, so from India there are nearly 1 2 3 4 5 points that are going outside and that are bringing in. So sitting at one place, like this is for Maharashtra, Mumbai. Okay, so this point is in Cochin. All right, so there are different points here. Like if you are sitting in Mumbai, and from Mumbai, if you want to send a message or an image to someone in Dubai, okay, sitting here in Dubai. So how will that go? So it will go from here. Okay, so from here it might take this particular route. I think it's gonna be the red route from here. Okay, and the red route is going to this place, and then it is going here. So it depends on the cables and all, but basically the entire internet is in the sea. Okay, so if there's a question like where is the internet? Okay, internet is under the sea. That is the answer. All right, so just for your information, I'm sharing it here. All right, coming back to our web application part. So web application is a application software that can be accessed by a user using a web browser. Okay, so there is web application and there is a website. Let's discuss the differences between two. In a website there are no functionalities, and a web application there are functionalities. The functionalities could be, you are able to log in, you are able to create an account, you are able to buy something. Okay, you are able to like transaction, do certain transaction. That is what web application is. And a website is basically a static thing. You don't put in anything interactive there. You just display the contents there. Okay, you just display the content there in a website. And in a web application, you add certain functionalities. Okay, so this is the difference between website and web application. Now let's see how this web application works. Okay, so we have a web server. And what does a web server do? A web server is a it's a software program which manages the web pages. Okay, or it serves the web pages to the browser or to the client. Okay, so sorry, to the user. All right, so web server basically has web pages and graphic files, images, and some things like that. Okay, and then a user using his system and a web browser can access the web pages or images or whatever he wants using the web server. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is how web application works. I'm pretty sure you are aware of this concept. So going to the next concept is protocol. Very important concept. Please make sure you understand some of the protocols here. And mention as a fresher, mention protocol and port numbers that we'll be discussing in the next slide in your resume. Okay, it's very important to mention protocol and port numbers. All right, so understand the internet. Okay, how the internet works is that it works on the basis of protocol. Okay, it's protocol that are configured everywhere, and because of the protocol the internet is working, the systems are working. You are able to send something, you are able to receive something, you are able to make a call and everything. All these are because of protocol. Okay, so what is this protocol? Protocol basically means set of rules. They are set of rules designed for specific tasks. Okay, protocol is a set of rule for specific tasks to perform certain individual task. Okay, to perform certain individual task. So this is a definition of protocol, which means set of rules. Okay, next we have port numbers. Okay, protocols. For every protocol there is a port number. Now port number are of two type. One is physical port number and another one is logical port number. Okay, so physical ports, you are very much aware of the physical ports like USB, and the serial ports that you to which you connect the projector. You have HDMI, you have the aux, audio, and lot of that. So these are physical ports. Talking about the logical ports, these are logical ports which doesn't exist in reality. However, protocols use the logical port numbers to establish a connection. Okay, same way, just like how the physical ports are there, it is used to connect something, establish a connection, right? So it helps you to connect something. The same way we have the logical ports which helps to connect something. Okay, so there are talking about the port numbers. I'm not talking about the physical ports here. Physical ports, are just physical, so we'll eliminate that because we're talking about protocol. So when you're talking about protocol, it's only about logical ports only. Okay, so logical ports, there are 65,536 logical ports in the computer or a computer network. Okay, so there are 65,536. This number is very important from interview perspective. Please make sure you remember this: 65,536. Okay, 65,536 total number of protocols. And there are 1,024 protocols which are reserved. Okay, reserved means they are like fixed. Okay, so 1,024 reserved protocols and 65,536 total number of protocols. Please make sure you remember this number. Okay. And as a security red team assessor, when you are doing the information gathering, you have to find what protocols are running in a particular web server, what port numbers are open, what ports are open. All these things you have to do, and you do that using certain tools which will be covered to you in the training. Okay. Finding out port numbers is very important. Okay. Understanding protocols, understanding finding port numbers is part of information gathering. Okay. So that's about port numbers and protocols. Now we will discuss about various protocols. Okay, there are 65,000 total port numbers, and every port number has a protocol assigned. So there are 1024 protocols which are already assigned by default. Okay, to the port numbers. So we will we will discuss about the various protocols here. The first protocol is HTTP protocol. Okay, so what is this HTTP? HTTP stands for hypertext transfer protocol. Okay, it is designed to communicate between clients and you and servers. Okay, client and servers can communicate using the HTTP protocol. It is basically called as a request response protocol. Okay, request response protocol. So there is a request that is been sent by the user, and the server in return gives the response. Okay, like a client or a browser or a user sends a HTTP request to the server. The server then takes the request and responds to that request. Okay. We'll see further how this exactly works. So as I said, an HTTP request is sent and a response is taken. Okay. So this work is done by the server. And which server is this? This is a web server. As we discussed in the previous session, server, what is the functionality of the server? The functionality of a server is to provide certain services. Okay, so what type of service does a web server provides? A web server provides the web services. Okay, web services. What type of web services? It basically provides the web pages, because web servers has web pages. Okay, so they provide the web pages to the client. All right. So in this scenario that we're talking, what is the request? In reality, what exactly is the request? Okay, is the question. So the request that we are talking here, that the user will be doing, will be in reality, at a ground level, it will be something like www.cybersapiens.in. Okay, so you go to your browser, you put in the browser www.cybersapiens.in, and you hit enter. Okay, when you hit enter, it will go to the web server where this particular website is being hosted, and there's a web page which is configured for this particular URL. Okay, and in return, the web server will give you that web page. All right, so this is the request and the response. Okay, so what is HTTP? HTTP is basically a web protocol which is used to send and receive web pages on the internet. Okay, it is used to send and receive web pages. All right, web pages only. So what are these web pages made of? Every web pages that are there, it is made up of HTML language, HTML hypertext markup language. Okay, so any website you visit, at the end it has a HTML open tag, HTML close tag, then there is body open and body close. In between this, there are other languages that are used, like JavaScript is used, .NET, JSPs are used, ASP.NET is used, and lot of other languages are used. However, every web page is configured using the HTML language only. Okay, so that's about the HTTP so far. Next is to understand HTTP methods. Okay, again, very important, and there are many methods that are there. However, we are not going to discuss every methods. We are only going to discuss about two methods here, that is get method and post method. Okay, http get method and http post method. So let's understand the both of these with a difference. Okay, so get method, when we are using, the data is sent in the URL. Okay, so when a website uses get method, whatever data is being transferred and sent is sent in the URL. Okay, and in the post method, the data is sent in the HTML body. So what is this data that we're talking about? Like generally, if you are logging into a website, okay, when you're logging into a website, you have to enter your credentials, that is your username and your password. So this is the data. Okay, in the get method, the data is sent in the URL, and in the post method, the data is sent in the HTML body. Okay, limited size of data can be sent. You can't send huge amount of size of data. In post method, there is no limitation because it is in the HTML body, it is in the web page itself. Okay, it is inside a particular page. Only ASCII character data type are allowed in a get method. In a post method, it allows binary data as well. Okay, again an advantage here. Get method is not secure and post method is secured comparatively. The reason is because in a post method, the data, one of the reason why it is secure is that the data is not stored by the web browser history. Okay, so browser does not store the data, whereas in the get method, the browser will be storing the data in the history tab. Okay, why? Because in the history, all the URLs that you visit are stored, and in this thing, the data itself is sent in the URL. So the data gets stored in the browser history also. It's a very risky thing. Okay, so second thing is data can be seen directly, as it is sent in the URL. Anyone can see the data directly. However, in this case, data cannot be seen directly. Like this is one of the example using get method. When you log in, you can see in the top the name, email ID. Okay, however, in the post method, you cannot see anything. You can just see register.asp. Like if you're accessing a website or a blog page or something, you can see that attributes are given. ID is equal to 1, ID is equal to 2, ID is equal to 3, like that you see. Okay, so small tip I would like to give: if at all you find something like that, ID is equal to this much or something, try to change that value here. Okay, this is called as basically a SQL injection attack. We do this in a manual SQL injection attack. So you can try changing the value and see what result you are getting. Okay, so if you are getting access of someone else's account using the ID, or by changing the ID or something, or if you're getting some access to internal data, then you have found a bug there. Okay, so a tip here in doing bug bounty. So this is how the get method and post method is used, and these are the differences. Okay, so as I said, apart from get method and post method, there are many more methods. So this is the task for you to research on various HTTP methods, including get, post, and the others also that are there. Okay, and if at all you are finding any issues, please you can contact us, or you can make a note of it, and then you can connect with us once we onboard you, and you can get all your doubts clarified. Okay, we will keep one particular session specially for you, where we will clear, there will be one-to-one session for you where we'll clear all your doubts. All right, so make sure you mark it and keep, try to understand from by yourself as much as possible. Okay, because we want to make you completely independent. Okay, so that's something which is part of our training only. However, in the worst case, you can contact us. So this is the task. Going next is about HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, so again, definitely you might have used HTTPS, and you might have heard, there are two these things. So why do we have HTTPS when we already had HTTP, and what is the difference? Let's understand that first. So the HTTP protocol, it has a vulnerability. Okay, as I said, vulnerability exists everywhere. When there is a vulnerability, we remediate it by implementing a control. Okay, so there is a vulnerability here, and that vulnerability has been remediated by implementing a control, and we have an updated version, what we call as HTTP. Yes. Okay, so what is the vulnerability here? What is the vulnerability with HTTP? The vulnerability is that whatever data is sent in HTTP protocol, whatever data is sent, it is sent in plain text. Okay, whatever, like when you are logging in, that data, your credentials that are sent, they are not they are sent in plain text. So basically this is not secure. However, in case of HTTPS protocol, okay, whatever data you send, it is encrypted. Okay, it is encrypted, and HTTPS is considered as secure. So the S stands for secure. Okay, so this is the difference. We will cover you about cryptography in the next slide that we're coming. So the port number for HTTP is 80 or 8080, and the port number for HTTPS is 443. Please make sure at no point of time you forget the port number of HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, it would be a foolish thing to forget, so please make sure you do not forget the HTTP and HTTPS. There are few things that you cannot forget at all, that you have to remember, like the phases of ethical hacking. It's very important. Okay, so the port, what is HTTP and HTTPS and the difference, again, it is very important, and do not forget the port number for that. Okay, so this is HTTP and HTTPS for you, which is used. uh, uh, you know there is an attack called as eavesdropping attack that was been done. So we will teach that attack to you in the training. There's one more attack called as man in the middle attack, again, that will also be covered for you, where you can break this. You can make use of, or you can exploit this particular vulnerability of HTTP. And you can also see how the HTTPS works in a secure condition, how the data is encrypted and all that. So that will be done during the training time. Okay, so that's the difference with HTTP and HTTPS. Next protocol that we will discuss is FTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. It is a protocol which is used to transfer files from the server to the computer. To transfer files, FTP is used. To receive or access web pages, websites, or web application, HTTP or HTTPS is used. Okay, so FTP runs on port number 21. This is a fixed port. Okay, it is a fixed for FTP. 80 is fixed for HTTP. 443 is fixed for HTTPS. Okay, so FTP protocol, it runs on port number 21. So there is an FTP server. Okay, and this particular server provides the service of sending and receiving files on the internet. This is the service that it provides to its clients. Okay, so to its client. So like you want to download an image or a song from a internet, from a website. So you go to the website. When you are accessing the website, you use the protocol HTTP or yes. And when you click on download, okay, when you click on download, and when the download starts, or when you click on the download, it will go to port 21 on the FTP server, and FTP server, through FTP server, you are able to download the file. Okay, this is what is the use of FTP protocol. Next is domain name server or DNS. DNS is basically used to convert domain names into IP address. Okay, why do we need a domain name server or a DNS protocol? Because every websites that are there, every web applications that are there, they are remembered using the IP address only. Okay, because in a network, the important and main thing that is required is an IP address. If there is no IP address assigned, then it cannot be in the network. Okay, so every web server has a IP address allocated to it. I'll not discuss much about IP address, because we will teach you about IP address in the network module during the training, so I'm not covering anything about IP address here. There are a lot of things that you should be knowing about IP address and understand about IP address from a career perspective and internet, so interview perspective as well. So what happens is we cannot remember the IP address. It's very difficult to remember the IP address. That is why for making human life easier, to make our life easier, we are using the help of a protocol called as domain name protocol, which will by which we don't have to remember these numbers, we can remember the name, because humans can easily remember a name and not a big number, okay, or a large number, right? So we have example.com, and when we enter example.com, the DNS protocol will convert it to the IP address and it will do all the work automatically. We don't have to do anything. That is DNS protocol. Okay, the next protocol is SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Now SMTP protocol is something which is used to send email to the server. Okay, so send and receive email. So basically we have a sender, okay, and we have a receiver. So the sender sends an email and the receiver receives it. Now this doesn't the email doesn't go from directly from peer, in a peer-to-peer network. That is, there is a client server based. This is a client server based architecture or model. It's not peer to peer. Okay, peer to peer is only the Tor. If you have used Tor or if you're using Tor, Tor is basically a peer to peer. There is no server. Okay, your systems becomes the server. Your system serves as a server. That is Tor for you, and peer to peer network architecture. However, most of the web servers and mail servers and all, they are client server based only. Okay, so whatever you send, it should go to a server. Now this server here that I'm talking about is a mail server. Okay, earlier we talked about web server, file transfer server, DNS server. Now this is a mail server. Okay, so when you are sending something to a to the another person through the, you use the mail server. Okay, so to send your email from here to the mail server, you through the internet, you use the protocol SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And then at the receiver end, the receiver will, in order to receive this email from the mail server, POP or IMAP protocols are used. Okay, so IMAP stands for Internet Access Message Protocol. It's an email protocol that deals with managing and retrieving emails from the receiving server. And there is POP, which stands for Post Office Protocol. This is again very important. SMTP, IMAP, and POP protocol. These are very, very important topics. Okay, so what happens is, the email that you have sent, it is now in the server. Okay, it is in the server now, using the SMTP protocol. Now earlier, okay, earlier POP was used and now IMAP is being used. Now why IMAP, why we are required to use IMAP, and what is the concept of POP? We'll look at it. So what happened was, earlier when mail systems were started, storage was a big issue. As you know, at that time, 20 years back and all, storage used to be in MBs. Okay, it is not used to be in GBs also, it used to be in MBs. So the email used to get sent to the mail server. Okay, from there the user had to download it. Okay, so when the user downloaded, the copy got deleted from the server, because there was no space, there was no much space, there was no much storage thing there. So it used to get deleted from the server. Okay, now after time, especially when Google came up and all, where they had their own cloud technology and all that, so what they did was, they came up with IMAP protocol. Using IMAP, when you access that email, okay, that email does not get deleted from the mail server. This is the only difference. So when you use POP, mail gets deleted from the mail server, which means you can access that email only from that particular system and not from anywhere else. But whereas in the case of IMAP, you can access Gmail using your mobile phone, you can access the email. Using system you can access the email, and even using tablet also you can access the email. From multiple systems, multiple devices, you can access the email. So the email will not get deleted. In the case of IMAP, in the case of POP, the email will get deleted. So that's about IMAP, SMTP and POP protocol. The next type of protocol is TCP or UDP. Again, very important concept here. TCP stands for Transfer Control Protocol and UDP stands for Usergram Data Protocol. Okay, so these protocols are used to build connection, okay, and transfer the data. TCP, UDP are used to build connection, okay, to build a connection and to transfer the data. So there is a client, okay, there is a server. So in order for a client to talk to the server, to access a particular website or something, there needs to be a connection that should be built, right? Without connection, it will not respond, right? Even generally, unless and until you build a relationship, you build a rapport, then only the other person will respond to whatever queries you give, right? So what happens here is, in order to send and receive data, okay, in order to access something or download something, you need to build a connection. There should be a connection that should be established, and this connection is established using the TCP or UDP protocol. Okay, so once the established is connected, then you access the files or the data. So if the data is a file, what protocol will be used here? In this case, once the connection is built and you're trying to access a particular file, download a file, in that case what protocol will be used? The protocol used will be FTP protocol. Okay, and if the data is a web page, if the data is a web page, so you are asking for a web page and it will give the web page, in that case what protocol will be used? In that case, HTTP or HTTPS protocol will be used. Okay, so looking at the difference, TCP is a connection oriented protocol and UDP is connectionless protocol. Okay, connection oriented means it the connection is established and the connection stays for a particular time. Okay, so whatever data is sent, it is acknowledged in return. Okay, but in case of UDP is connectionless, so there is no complete connection. I mean, yeah, it does build the connection. However, whatever messages are being sent, okay, it does not acknowledge back that yeah, I have received this and all. So if you're finding it confusing to understand, let me help you understand with the scenario. Okay, so we have a data, the size of the data is 1 MB. All right, and as we know, whatever data is there, it is broken into packets, broken into pieces or packets, and then only it is sent. Okay, so we'll consider that this is in the case of TCP, and same thing in the case of UDP also. We have a data which is of 1 MB, it is broken into packets. Okay, now what happens next is, when the data is being sent, okay, when the data is sent, in the case of TCP, it is received randomly but displayed in order. However, in UDP, it is displayed as received, so which means that the packets that are there, this particular data, when it is broken into packets, it will have a unique number. Okay, and it will go to the server side. So when the server or the client, it could be anything, when they receive it, they will acknowledge back. Okay, and in the packets, if number 10 packet is reaches first, then it will wait for packet number 1 to arrive. Once the packet 1 is arrived, then it will take number 2, number 3, number 4, like that. So every packet will be taken in an order. Okay, this is the reason why you never see a website loading from below side or this side or in between, or randomly. You always see a website loading from the top only. Why? Because it takes and it displays as per the order. It will not display just like that. But in the case of UDP is not like that. UDP just whatever it gets, it displays. Okay, so UDP is used in online gaming, okay, and UDP is fast because it takes and it shows, but TCP it's not like that. It has to wait until number one guy comes. Once first person comes, he has to put there, then number two, number three, like that. Okay, so UDP is used in online gaming, online streaming, because their speed is required, and that's the reason in while you watch online sports games or video or anything, the live one, telecasting one, if you miss something in between, it's gone. You cannot see that. You get to see the next packet. That's what UDP is. Okay, so, in a funny scenario, if you have to see, this is TCP, where the sender is giving the data very carefully, and it is taking the data one by one, okay, and it is arranging also. However, in UDP, the sender is not bothered; it just randomly sends. Okay, so this is about TCP and UDP protocol. So these are some of the protocols that we have discussed. As I said, there are 1,000+ protocols that are there, and only few we have discussed here. The rest of the protocols, I would want you to give it as a task, and you have to research on various protocols and its port numbers. Okay, at a minimum, there are certain common protocols which you have to be knowing at any cost. Like we have HTTP, then there is HTTPS, then there is SMTP, DNS, FTP, like that. Lot more common things are there. At least make sure you read and understand about that. Okay, it's very simple. At the end, it does some work. Okay, it does some work. Like FTP, it does the work of sending and receiving files. HTTP, it does the work of sending and receiving web pages. So this is the work of the protocol. Okay, so try to understand that. Apart from this, whatever are there, please make sure you work on the this particular task. Make a report of the different protocols that you come across, and then you can share it with us once we onboard you, and we will review it and we will give back to you, so that you can upload that on your LinkedIn. Okay, when you upload that on your LinkedIn, you will get more weightage. Your profile gets more weightage. Okay, so that's about the protocols and port numbers. The next topic is cryptography. Okay, very interesting topic, very important concept in cybersecurity. More than half percent of cybersecurity is dependent on cryptography. Okay, so what is cryptography? Cryptography basically means converting a data into a non-human readable format. Okay, converting a data into a non-human readable format. This is cryptography. Like we have a plain text which is in readable format. When you encrypt, okay, there are two things: encryption and decryption. Encryption means converting it to a ciphertext. Ciphertext means non-human readable format. Okay, and then you decrypt. Decryption means converting it back to the original text. This is decryption. Okay, like for example, there is John is the plain text, is the data. There are algorithms used. So 256 AES is an algorithm, encryption algorithm, and when this data is passed through this particular algorithm, the ciphertext that we get is something like this, which is rubbish, which is of no use, right? So then it is again decrypted and you get the original message back. All right, so this is where cryptography has been used from very long time. One of the scenario is earlier days, during the Raja Maharaja time. The Raja used to bald his Senapati, write the message on his head, okay, and send him to the other person, because at that time there were no vehicles, and also it used to take weeks and months of time. So by the time this person reached there, his hair would grow and no one would able to see it. And when he reaches there, the king again used to bald his hair, and he could read the message that this person had sent. This is a simple example of cryptography that was being used at a very long time. Okay, so what's happening here is when with the help of encryption, when someone is sending a data, like A is sending a data to B, and in between C gets access to this data. So this particular attack is called as eavesdropping attack, which I said we will cover for you in the training session. So when C, or an intruder, gets access to this particular data, he will see junk data like this. Okay, because this is junk data. Okay, and he'll not be able to see anything else. It will be junk data for me. He'll have to do decrypt for it. Okay, so decryption, it's not that easy, because it takes a long process, and you need supercomputers for that and all. So anyways, coming back, the question here that I would like to ask is, in this case scenario, where intruder is able to get the message, but is not able to read the actual message. In this, considering this particular scenario, what part of cyber security are we protecting here? Using cryptography as a control, what part of cyber security are we protecting? I've already discussed this in the previous session. So please think the answer in your mind. If your answer is confidentiality, then it is absolutely right. You have passed the test. Okay, but if you're thinking about integrity, availability, no, it's only about confidentiality. Okay, so we are protecting confidentiality, or we protect confidentiality with the help of cryptography. Okay, so in cryptography, there are two types of encryption that are done. One is symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. Again, very important concepts. Please try to understand this, and grasp the understanding, and you know keep it in your mind for a long time, because this will help you a lot. Two types of encryption: symmetric and asymmetric. The difference between is that, first of all, in symmetric key encryption, one key is used. Okay, so there are keys that are used. There is something called as keys. Key is a lock, as you can see in the image itself. It's basically a lock that is used to encrypt, and the same lock should be used to decrypt. This is symmetric encryption. Okay, one key to encrypt, and the same key to decrypt. This is called as symmetric encryption. Okay, only one key is used. But whereas in the case of asymmetric encryption, it uses two keys. So here there is a private key and there is a public key. Okay, so what happens here is, a public key is something which is known to everyone, whereas a private key is a secret key known only to the user. Okay, so in the case of asymmetric, what happens is, the encryption is done using the public key of the other person. Okay, and this person, receiver, okay, receiver, or the sender encrypts it using the receiver's public key, and the receiver will decrypt it using his private key, his own private key. Okay, so decryption using private key, encryption using public key. This is asymmetric encryption. Okay, looking at the difference between symmetric and asymmetric, one key here, two keys, public and private. Okay, public key is made available to everyone, and private key is kept secret. Here key exchange concept is not there, because only one key is used. The speed is less complex and faster. The algorithm is more complex and slower, because there are two keys used. It becomes lengthier. All right, so the uses of symmetric encryption is bulk encryption. Okay, which means encrypting files and communication parts in a bulk. Key distribution and digital signatures, we use asymmetric. We'll discuss about digital signatures. In terms of security, symmetric encryption provides confidentiality. In terms of security, asymmetric encryption provides confidentiality, authentication, and non-repudiation. Please remember this term, non-repudiation. Non-repudiation means one cannot deny that he had sent the mail, message, or content, or the traffic is not generated from him. He cannot deny it. Whatever he is sending, he cannot deny that he has done that. This is called as non-repudiation. Okay, so we have now understood what is symmetric, one key, asymmetric, two key. Very simple. Okay, let's keep it simple. So where is asymmetric encryption used in real time? Where is asymmetric encryption used in real time? The answer is, asymmetric key is used in the HTTPS protocol, where S stands for security. As I said, encryption is done. Encryption is done of the data that is being sent. So what type of encryption? Asymmetric encryption is done. Okay, so where is symmetric encryption used in real time? Symmetric encryption is used in something called as BitLocker. If you're not sure what BitLocker is a tool with which you can encrypt your data. it's a Microsoft based tool. You might have it in your system. Every systems, Windows systems gets a BitLocker. You can go to your drive. Okay, don't open the drive. Right click on the drive and you can see encryption or BitLocker option there. Okay, so symmetric encryption is used in real time in BitLocker and asymmetric in HTTP. Yes. Okay. Now with a web application scenario, I'll explain you how the asymmetric encryption works in real time in a HTTPS protocol, which is what we are using in our day-to-day life. Okay, we use this in our day-to-day life, and let's see how this works in a scenario based explanation now. So you are here accessing the browser and you want to access a particular website. Okay, the website is a bank website, for example bank.com. Okay, you want to do some online transaction, so you are opening the browser and you're trying to connect the bank.com. So this bank.com is located in a server. The server could be anywhere. The server could be in US. The server could be in Germany. It could be in America. The server could be anywhere. And if you want to access this particular website, okay, if you want to do the transaction, if you want to access your account and do all that stuff, first thing and very important thing is to establish a protocol or to establish a connection. Okay, so for that we use TCP protocol. And please remember, most of the or all of the web applications or web servers, they use TCP protocol only for the connection. Okay, UDP protocol is not used. All right, because UDP is connectionless and TCP is connection oriented. Okay, so when TCP protocol is used to build a connection, the connection is established. Okay, and when the connection is being established in the initial stage, certain exchange of information happens. Okay, so bank will share some information and browser will also share some information to the server. Okay, so what information will the browser share to the server? Browser will share the client or the browser information, the system information. So the information here includes IP address, the system, whether mobile phone or what device is used, operating system, what operating system is used, what browser is used, session ID, cookies. Lot of this information are shared to the server. So server will have a log of your details. Okay, and in return the server will also share its information. Okay, out of the many information which the server will share, one of the information will be, or one of the information is the public key. Okay, out of the many information that bank will share to the browser, one of the information will be public key. Okay, now exchange of information is happened. This is done. So the browser has shared the information, server has also shared the information. Now, so public key if HTTPS is used. Okay, and banking applications, they do use HTTPS protocol. So you access the website now. Okay, bank.com is loaded. Okay, and then you log in. Okay, so let's consider the login transaction itself. All right, so when the data is sent, what data is sent here? The login credentials, the username and password is shared. Okay, so when this particular data has to be sent, the data is encrypted. Okay, because if you send in plain text, anyone in between can access it using the eavesdropping attack or man in the middle attack, and they can see the password of your banking application in plain text, and they can log in from their end. So it's very risky, so we have to encrypt it. Okay, so encryption happens using what? As we know, there are two keys that are used: one key, public key, and private key. Okay, so the browser already has the public key of the bank. Okay, so it will encrypt before sending the data. It will encrypt using the bank's public key, and when the server receives it, it will decrypt it using its own private key. Okay, so this is how the asymmetric encryption happens over a web application. So if I take you to the website, okay, now I have accessed this particular website, okay, I hit enter and I access this particular website. So if you want to see the information, no, you click on this lock symbol. When you click on this lock symbol, you will get this options here, select certificate. Okay, when you select certificate, you can here see that the certificate is issued. So this is part of the HTTPS. So it is issued to microsoft.com. Okay, one more thing, please make sure that if you see a website which is HTTPS, okay, it is secure, but you don't trust those applications. Just because a website is having HTTPS, okay, or that lock symbol, you can't trust that. Okay, it only means it is secure, but it cannot be trusted. Why? I'll tell you. Because I can create a website with any fake name and I can purchase a HTTPS for 100 rupees, 200 rupees, even for free. Cloudflare provides it for free. Okay, I don't have to pay anything, and I'll create a fake website and I'll send it across. You will have the intention ki, okay, this has a lock symbol, this HTTPS, it is secure. You trust that, you put some information, in return that information will be, and the hackers, or yeah, hackers and a black hat hackers, and you will lose your data or you will lose your money. Okay, so don't trust it. How will you verify? To verify, as I said here, you click on the lock symbol. When you click on the lock symbol, you click on certificate. If it is from Microsoft, Microsoft will have name here, that is account.microsoft.com, and you can see issued by their Microsoft has their own certificate authority. So this particular certificate, SSL certificate, is provided by a certifying authority, or CA we call them. Okay, so if you click on the details here, come down, you can see it is using hash algorithm SHA. We'll discuss about hashing in the next slide. Okay, so hashing signature is used. So if you come down, if you scroll down, you can see public key. When you click public key, you get the public key here. This is the public key which is in hexadecimal form. Okay, this is the public key which the my browser has, which the server shared to my browser when I initially build the connection. Okay, so if you look at the certification path, this certification path comes here from DigiCert. So DigiCert is the certifying authority company which has provided to Microsoft, and then it is given to the account.microsoft domain. Okay, similarly we have our other system here. Click on this certificate and you can see that it is issued to uidi.com. Okay, and if you click on the details, you can see that it is this is the public key of it, so publicly known to everyone. So when we say, when I have been telling this, that public key is something which is known to everyone, it doesn't, it means that it is with the browser. Okay, known to everyone means not humans, to the browser. Okay, it is in the browser basically. Okay, so this is the public key and it is issued to uidi.com. It is valid till August 2022. The certification path, if you see, again provided by DigiCert. DigiCert is one of the certifying authority. Okay, so in order to get this certificate, a company has to provide their identification. Okay, their Udyog Aadhaar, maybe their PAN, their GST, all these details they have to provide, their registration certificate, then only they will give this. Okay, simply anyone will not get UIDAI here. All right, so please verify. If you are accessing a website of Cisco, then it will be there that it is issued to Cisco .com. Okay, let's see for this submarine cable map, because it also has HTTPS. Yes, it is issued to submarinecablemap.com. It is been sponsored by some HMN technology company. So it is provided to submarine cable map. So it means that they have they have purchased it by showing their identity. Okay, so coming back, this is how the asymmetric encryption works. The next thing is hashing. Okay, hashing is basically converting a plain text into a non-human readable format. Okay, same like cryptography only, but the difference is you cannot regain it back. Regain it back in the sense, once a hash is done, okay, hashing is done, that same text cannot be regained back. However, there are methods where you can find the value of that hash value, you can find it, okay, but the reversing cannot be done, not through reversing, through some other methods. Okay, so basically what happens is there is a plain text, okay, and there are hash functions, okay, and when this plain text is sent to the hash function, it will generate something called as a hash text or a hash value. Okay, so the hash value will be a alphanumeric. Okay, it will be alphanumeric, and the best thing about the hashing is that every time you run the same plain text in the same function, the hash value will be the same. Like if I'm putting in Robin, okay, and there are hash functions is MD, that is message digest, and there is SHA, which stands for secure hash algorithm. These are the two widely used algorithms. So if I put in Robin to MD5, the latest one, it will for example generate A1 B1 C1. Okay, if I make slight changes, like if I put Robin dot a full stop, then A1 B1 D1, it will not be like A1 B1 D1 C1, it will be something else only. Okay, so every time you put in the same value on the same function, the same output is generated. Okay, so the difference with hashing and encryption, I am pretty much sure you are clear. Here it is decryptable, that is it can be reversed back, but hashing cannot be reversed back. Okay, so where is hashing used and why is this thing, like it cannot be reversed back, so what is the use of it? Where is hashing used? So there are two implications of hashing. One of the implications is authentication purpose. Okay, for the purpose of authentication, nowadays most of the companies are using hashing mechanism. So authentication, we have already discussed that there are three methods of authentication. Which are they? The three methods of authentication, they are something you know, something you have, and something you are. Okay, this is how the authentication is done. Now coming back to the scenario of the authentication, in a traditional in a old method, how the authentication happens in a web page is that you give a password. Okay, the password will be in plain text. Okay, and it will be stored in plain text in the database itself. Okay, so anyone who gets access to the database, they'll get the your password in plain text. Like we saw in the first session, we saw about the Have I Been Pawned site, right, where the passwords were stolen. Okay, so all those passwords were in plain text and they know what my password is now. And we humans have a you know very bad behavior, that is to use only one password and the same password is used everywhere. Okay, so generally they have my email ID, they know my one of my password that I used at a particular site. They can use that password at multiple accounts and sites and check. Definitely it will work out for various places as well, because that I don't do that because I use different passwords. But in general human scenario, if we see, many use, even you might be using common passwords itself. If you're not using common passwords, same password everywhere, it's very good, I appreciate you. But if you're using common password, same password, if it is being used in two or three places, then there's no use. Okay, so anyways, coming back, as we know, cyber attacks are very common. Cyber attacks goes on happening. There is this attack called as SQL injection, from which you can fetch database. We will teach that to you in the session. Okay, so if passwords are stored in plain text, it is very risky. Okay, so in the new one, what companies are doing is that, okay, all the passwords are being hashed and a hash value is generated, and in the database, instead of the plain text, the hash value of the password is stored. Okay, now what happens with this is that, with this I believe you have understood the risk. Okay, now what happens here is, if this is used, if anyone hacks into the database, Okay, if anyone gets access to the database, they steal the data, then they will not have the plain text, they will have some junk data. Okay, like A1 B1 C1 D1 D1, something like that they will have, which is a junk data for them. It's a hash value. Okay, in order to get it back, they'll have to do lot of things they have to do, and it's not that easy also to do it. Okay, now what happens, let's see, when when you're logging in, because you're storing it in a hash form, right? So basically what happens is, when you log in, okay, when you enter the password, like when you enter the first time, when you enter the password, no, that time the hash value will be generated and it will be stored in the database, which will be associated to your account or to your user ID. Okay, so the next time when you log in, you give your password. Okay, so this password the application will take and it will generate a hash value of that password. Okay, and when the hash value is generated, this hash value is sent to the database, okay, to check whether it matches or not. So your user ID, okay, like robsource19 and A1B1C1 is sent. For the robsource19, it will check whether the hash value password database is A1B1C1. If it is A1B1C1, then it will authenticate me to get in. Okay, so this is the real-time implication, one of the real-time implication where hashing or hash function is used for the security purpose. The second thing is in digital signatures. Okay, another very important concept, please try to understand this. So digital signatures are widely used nowadays. If you see, most of the government officials and all, digital signatures are used. Okay, so here the digital signature doesn't mean taking a photo of your signature and using it. No, that is not digital signature. This is a different thing here. Okay, and we will check that out now. So the features of digital signature is it provides authorization and integrity. There is no confidentiality here. Okay, it does authorization and it provides integrity to the data that is being sent. Okay, now let's understand the working of digital signatures, how it works. Let's assume that there are two people, Suresh and Ramesh. Okay, Suresh wants to send a particular content or something to Ramesh. Understand, there are two things, integrity and authentication. These are the two things which digital signature is protecting. Confidentiality is not a concern here as of now. Okay, so when Suresh is wants to send a message to a Ramesh, what happens? We will check that in a scenario based explanation here. So Suresh has a message to be sent. Okay, so this particular message is first being hashed and a hash value is generated. Okay, a hash value is generated, which is HV1, hash value 1. This is the hash value of the message. Okay, now this hash value 1, along with is this hash value 1 is combined with the message, with the original message. It is concatenated with the message, so you have HV1 and M, and this is called as M1 now. Okay, this becomes M1. So what is M1? M1 is message, the original message, plus the hash value of the original message. Okay, now this M1 is next been encrypted. Okay, so it is encrypted using the private key of Suresh. Okay, now don't get confused with asymmetric encryption. In asymmetric, encryption is done using the receiver's public key. Here encryption is done using sender's private key. Okay, so please understand the difference here. Now Suresh will use his private key and he will encrypt M1. So M1 becomes E1 now. Okay, so what is E1? E1 is encryption of M1. What is M1? M1 is original message plus hash value of the original message. This is M1 and this is E1. Okay, so this E1 along with the certificate becomes digitally signed message or digital signature. Okay, so E1 we already know what it is. A certificate that I have mentioned here, we will see what it is in when I am explaining the Ramesh part in the receiver end. Okay, so I hope it is clear. What is digital signature? Digital signature is basically the encryption of combination of original message and the hash value of the message and a certificate. Okay, this is what digital message or digital signature consists of. Okay, so at the other side, on the other side, when Ramesh will receive it, now he has E1 plus certificate, so he will segregate it. Okay, so he has E1 now. Okay, now when he will so E1 is basically encrypted, no, now he has to decrypt that, right? So he has to first decrypt. Okay, so it is encrypted, E1 is encrypted using Suresh private key, which means that it can be decrypted using Suresh public key only. So Ramesh, what he will do, he will decrypt this E1 using Suresh public key and the same algorithm which is used. Now how will Ramesh come to know the what is the private public key of Suresh? That public key is what is contained in the certificate. Okay, so the certificate will contain the public key of Suresh and few other attributes also it will be there. Okay, so when decryption is done, it is done using Suresh public key. When Ramesh decrypts it successfully, okay, when Ramesh decrypts it successfully, it means that this particular message has got decrypted using Suresh public key only, which means this message is sent by Suresh only. Okay, so here we have achieved something called as non-repudiation, which means Suresh now cannot say that this message was not sent by me, because we are able to decrypt it. It means that it is encrypted using his own private key and he cannot deny that it was not sent by me. Okay, so we have achieved now what? Non-repudiation. Now when decryption is done, he will have two things. One is HV1, okay, HV1, and another thing is HV2. Okay, sorry, HV1 and M is what? The actual message, and HV1 is the hash value of this message. Now what Ramesh will do? Ramesh will take this M. Okay, he will generate a hash value of this M using the same algorithm which Suresh used, that is provided in the certificate. So Ramesh will collect that information from the certificate. He will run the same algorithm, for the M message, and a hash value 2 is generated now. Okay, so M he takes, he will get the algorithm details from the certificate. He will run the M to the hash function, and hash value is generated, which is named as HV2. Now what Ramesh will do? Ramesh will check whether HV1 is equal to HV2 or not. If they are same, because any changes that happens in the message, if any changes happens in the message in between, then the hash value to the hash value will be completely changed. Okay, unless and until there is no change in the message, the hash value will not change. So in this case, if it is matching, it means that whatever message he has sent is same message what Ramesh has received. Okay, so with this we achieve what? We achieve integrity. Okay, so Ramesh now can say that this is been sent by Suresh and there is no modification that has happened to the message that is sent by Suresh. Okay, so where digital signatures are used, again digital signatures are used in officials, like if you download your documents, government documents from their government sites, you can see it is digitally signed, like land records. If you download, or you download your Aadhaar card, I'll show this to you in real time. I have my Aadhaar card downloaded. So when you download Aadhaar card, you can see it is digitally signed. No? If you have done it, you can see it is digitally signed. Okay, and we also use it to file our GST. In filing our GST, we use digital signatures. Okay, so there is a separate pen drive which has all the certificate and public key and private key in it. It's basically a software. Okay, whatever I explained here, right, it happens using a software only. Okay, so there is nothing like this thing doesn't happen in real time, but it is done using the software. Okay, so let's see this thing in a real time now. Okay, so the real implementation of this is Aadhaar system. I have downloaded one of my Aadhaar system, and if I open this, sorry, not with this, I'll have to open this with my Adobe. So when I open it with Adobe, uh, sorry. So when I open it with Adobe, here we can see that validity is not there. It should get a green tick mark here. Okay, it should get a green tick mark here. So that's my photo at a very young age. So please make sure you don't steal any of my information from here. Okay, anyways, I'll try to mask it as much as possible, but make sure you don't make use of it. Anyways, coming back, this is how the digital signature looks like, and we have to validate this signature, and there's a process for that, and how do you validate and all. So there's it's showing some error here. Anyways, generally you get to do it, just double click on this using any Adobe reader, and it will get validated. It will do the work by itself. Whatever we discussed here in the slide, all these things, it will be done by the software or the tool by default. Okay, so the task over this is to research on hash cracking tools and methods, and to prepare a report on any of the tool. So there are many hash cracking tools, okay, where you can crack the hash value. So it cannot be reversed back, but you can find through certain methods, through certain tools, you can do that. The task is to research on hashing tools and prepare a report. So lot of tasks we have given for you so far in this session videos that we have shared. And if you have so far, if you have not um, confirmed your confirmation for the internship position, please make sure you do that, so that we can start with the onboarding process and you start working on the task from now, by the time we roll out the offer letter for you. So that's it for this session. See you in the next session. We are almost done with the session that we are giving. However, there's one last session left. So see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye.